And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Prosecutors and defense attorneys made their final arguments this week in the trial of the Newburgh Four, a high-profile case that has made national headlines as a potent example of so-called homegrown terror. The four men from Newburgh, New York, are charged with plotting to bomb a synagogue and a Jewish community center in the Bronx. U.S. Assistant Attorney David Raskin says the four are, quote, criminally minded people who, quote, wanted to do something to America. But the defense argued they were entrapped by government agents and not predisposed to commit a terrorist crime. The case of the Newburgh Four bears many of the same characteristics of two other recent so-called homegrown terror cases involving Muslim men. The case of the Fort Dix Five, where 5 men from suburban New Jersey were convicted last year of conspiring to kill American soldiers at the Fort Dix Army base, and a case in Albany, New York, where a pizzeria owner and the imam of a local mosque were convicted of money laundering and conspiracy to support terrorism. In all 3 cases, Muslim men were arrested on terror charges. In all 3 cases, no terrorist crime was actually committed. In fact, no one was killed or injured. And all 3 cases relied heavily on hundreds of hours of surveillance secretly recorded by a paid government informant. Well, Democracy Now!'s Anjali, Kamat, and Big Noise Films' Jacquie Soohen spent months tracking these 3 stories. Anjali Kamat files this report.
Motivated by hate and bent on killing their neighbors.
According to the FBI, this was a plot to blow up 2 synagogues and a community center, all in the Bronx.
On May 20th, 2009, 4 African-American men from the city of Newburgh, New York, were arrested outside a synagogue in the Bronx. Known as the Newburgh Four, they made national headlines as stark examples of homegrown terror.
Prosecutors described the suspects as extremely violent men who embraced every opportunity for terrorism.
More than a year after their arrest, the Newburgh Four are now facing trial in Manhattan for conspiracy to use weapons of mass destruction and anti-aircraft missiles. But the case has raised serious questions about the government's role in creating and then foiling fake terror plots.
The suspects were duped. The bombs and missile were fake, supplied by the FBI and NYPD.
Alicia McCollum is the aunt of David Williams, one of the Newburgh Four. Since his arrest, she's tried to mobilize support for her nephew. Taking the train to the first day of the trial in August, she's visibly upset.
I was restless last night. I couldn't even sleep. You know, it was just so much. You know, you think about the family and what you're getting ready to go through. And it's like this whole year fighting for the case, and now it's like finally happening and we're going to trial. And just worry, you know, that the government, you know, want to make a case so bad that my nephew can go away for life. So it's just been like heavy on my mind last night, very heavy.
Like the other members of the Newburgh Four, 29-year-old David Williams lived in the economically devastated city of Newburgh and had served prison time on drug charges and petty criminal offenses. All 4 men were converts to Islam, and one of them, Laguerre Payen, is a Haitian-born immigrant and a paranoid schizophrenic. Alicia says she was shocked when she heard that these 4 men were being called terrorists.
Well, I got a call at 3 o'clock, 2009, in May. 3 o'clock at night, and my sister said they kicked in Lissy house. I'm like, who kicked in Lissy house? They was like, the FBI. I'm like, the FBI? What are you talking about? She was like, David, it got something to do with David. It's on the news, so I'm turned the news, and I'm looking at Bronx 12. It kept saying Bronx terror.
Federal agents moved in tonight and say their suspects are homegrown would-be terrorists.
I was cursing my TV out. They kept showing David. They kept showing David. I'm like, oh, my God. It was horrible. You know, I'm like, Homeland Security, the FBI, Bloomberg. We did not turn from the news.
Approaching the courthouse, Alicia, a devout Christian, says a prayer.
Keep your hands on me, Father. Got me through these 6 weeks, Lord. Give me the strength.
The Newburgh case is only one of several high-profile terrorism cases in the New York, New Jersey area. Less than a 3-hour drive from Newburgh is the quiet suburb of Cherry Hill, New Jersey. In May of 2007, it was the center of an FBI raid.
Police arrested 6 men and charged them with planning to attack the Fort Dix Army base.
4 of the 6 were of Albanian descent, and they're suspected of being Islamic fundamentalists.
This is a new kind of terrorism. It is not only coming from outside the United States in, but it is also growing inside our own country.
These homegrown terrorists can prove to be as dangerous as any known group, if not more so.
It all happened from when me and my brothers and a couple of friends, we went to a Poconos trip.
Burim Duka is the younger brother of 3 of the men convicted of conspiring to attack the nearby Fort Dix Army base. He explains that the FBI began following them after the family took their annual vacation to the Pocono Mountains in northern Pennsylvania in 2006.
We were going to the Poconos once a year, around the beginning of the year in winter time. We would go either in January or February. For 1 week we used to go.
Smile for the camera.
We went skiing, we were playing soccer in the snow. We were doing a lot of stuff. And then me and my brother, Elvir Duka, we went to Circuit City. We want everyone to have copies of how much fun we had.
Burim Duka and his brother Elvir had taken their home video to Circuit City to make DVDs. Included in the footage are scenes of the brothers and their friends firing guns in what they claim was simply target practice.
Allahu Akbar!
As they shoot, the young men are heard to say Allahu Akbar, an Arabic phrase that means God is great. When they're not shooting, they just seem to be having fun, throwing snowballs and posing for the camera.
What's happening, brother?
What's up, man? Allahu Akbar!
The clerk at Circuit City, however, decided to turn the video over to the local police.
That's how the case all started up, from the clerk at Circuit City. He turned it into the police turned it into the FBI, and they started following us from then.
When the men were arrested in 2007, federal prosecutors said their trips to the Poconos, as well as a later excursion to play paintball, were all part of their training for jihad. They said the group was plotting to attack the Fort Dix Army base near their home. 2 years later, 5 of the men on the Poconos trip, all in their 20s, were convicted of conspiring to kill American soldiers at Fort Dix. The Duka family are Albanians from the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. Ferik and Zurata Duka came to the United States in 1984 and lived in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn with their 3 sons, Dritan, Shane, and Elvir. As their family grew larger, they moved to New Jersey, and the boys joined their father in his roofing and construction business. At the time of their arrest, Dritan and Elvir Duka were married with 6 children. Now, with 3 of the brothers in solitary confinement in the Supermax prison in Florence, Colorado, the children live with the grandparents. We visited the family in July and met Leila Duka, a 12-year-old who insists her father, Dritan Duka, is innocent.
I know they're innocent, we all do, but people out there just don't want to look into the evidence. Hopefully they'll come home.
The 3 Duka brothers, along with their Palestinian-American friend Mohammed Schnur, are serving sentences of life plus 30 years. Hanan Schnur is the sister of Mohammed Schnur. She's also married to Elvir Duka. She says the men are not terrorists.
They're not that kind of people. They're normal people, not maniacs, like the way they made them seem. Mostly, I think it's Muslims are now a target for American government, and that's mostly the purpose, I know.
200 miles from the Duka house, Fatima Hussein, covered in a full veil, is busy running a pizzeria in downtown Albany. While caring for her 6 children, aged 4 to 18, she works from morning to night making pizza. She and her husband, Mohammed Hussein, are Bangladeshi immigrants. Her husband was arrested in 2004, along with the imam of the local mosque, in a money laundering scheme the FBI claims was related to terrorism. Fatima still has trouble explaining what happened to her family.
This is not easy answer to tell that what happened. It still is, to me, look like something like broke on your head. My husband, he is really hard-working man. I wish you can have a chance to meet with him. Everybody know him, all the local people as his delivery man, fixing house, taking care of family. His life turned different, like tragedy.
Last night, FBI agents in Albany, New York, arrested 2 men, 34-year-old Yassin Muhyiddin Aref and 49-year-old Mohammed Musharraf Hussein.
In August of 2004, Mohammed Hussein and Yassin Arif, neither of whom had any criminal record, were arrested and accused of being terrorists. 2 years later, they were convicted of money laundering and conspiracy to support terrorism and sentenced to 15 years in prison.
The Muslim community is standing strong and speaking out as two of their members learn their fate.
They are not terrorists. They had no criminal record. They had no interest of any violation of laws or so. Simply they were tricked.
Supporters of the two men say Mohammed Hussein thought he was just getting a loan from a Pakistani man who had recently befriended him. He enlisted the Imam Yassin Arif, who is a Kurdish refugee from Iraq, to witness the loan. What they didn't know at the time was that the National Security Agency had been secretly wiretapping Yassin Arif's phone calls, and the loan was part of an FBI sting operation. The generous Pakistani man was in fact an FBI informant.
Homegrown terror or entrapment? We'll come back to this documentary by Democracy Now!'s Anjali Kamat and Jacquie Soohen of Big Noise Films. Stay with us. What do you go home to? By explosions in the sky. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. We return now to Anjali Kamat and Jacquie Soohen's Homegrown Terror or Entrapment. This is Democracy Now! As we return to a report on the FBI's use of undercover informants in domestic terror cases. The report focuses on the Newburgh Four case, where jury deliberations are set to begin today, over whether 4 African-American men from Newburgh, New York, are guilty of conspiring to attack a synagogue and Jewish community center in the Bronx. The report also looks at 2 older cases, that of the Fort Dix 5 young men from suburban New Jersey who were convicted last year of conspiring to attack U.S. soldiers at the Fort Dix Army base, and a case in Albany, New York, where 2 men were convicted in 2007 of money laundering and conspiring to support terrorism.
Like the case of the Fort Dix 5 and the Newburgh Four, no terrorist crime was actually committed in Albany. No bombs went off, nothing was blown up, no one was killed or even injured. All 3 cases rest on fake plots concocted by the FBI and rely heavily on hundreds of hours of surveillance video and audio secretly recorded by a paid government informant. Karen Greenberg from New York University's Center on Law and Security says informants have become a crucial part of the post-9/11 domestic counterterrorism strategy.
The use of informants in the 50 most high-profile terrorism cases since 9/11 is 62%. The conviction rate for those cases that involved informants is almost 100%. It's 97%. So that gives you a kind of sense of how important they are and how useful they've been.
The FBI did not respond to our request for an interview, but we did speak to a former FBI agent who worked with multiple informants during his 35 years at the Bureau. James Weddick told us that informants are unreliable sources.
Look, informants are the most dangerous individuals on the planet. If you don't monitor them, something can go wrong.
A former street agent, Weddick says the line between uncovering terrorist plots and creating them has become increasingly blurry.
I'll venture to say in 90% of the cases that you see that have occurred in the last 10 years are garbage.
In Albany, the FBI used an informant named Shahid Hussein. He was a Pakistani businessman who fled his country after being arrested 3 times on charges that included murder. He wound up in Albany, New York in 1994, where he set up an illegal license scheme while working as a translator at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Shamshad Ahmed is the president of the As-Salam Mosque in Albany.
Living in a suburb where there are other Pakistanis, he was known to them.